Welcome to Doctorates of the Absurd. I am your guide through the wreckage of the modern intellect, Socrates. Today, we are not here to celebrate technology. We are not here to marvel at, the shiny new toys of Silicon Valley or to offer you investment advice on which semiconductor stock to buy. No, we are here to conduct an autopsy on a claim to knowledge. We have before us a transcript from early 2026. A conversation between Lex Fridman, Sebastian Roschka, and Nathan Lambert. It purports to be a state of AI report. But I look at this text, and I do not see a report, I see a confession.
And I am Frederick Synthesis Flow. I am here to map the currents. And when I look at this source material, I don't see a static confession. I see a battlefield. I really do. I see a tension between what I would call the totalizing truth, the Hegelian attempt by centralized labs like, say, OpenAI and Google to build the absolute spirit, right? A single God model that knows all and sees all. A tension between that and what Deleuze would call the rhizome. These subterranean nomadic flows of open weight, specifically coming from the East, from China. So this isn't just a tech update. This is a dialectic of control versus, well, chaos.
Precisely. Chaos wrapped in the guise of openness. So let's strip the paint off this vehicle immediately. The text centers around a specific rupture in the timeline. They call it the DeepSeek moment of early 2025. Now, typically the narrative of AI progress is, linear. The Americans build the big computer, the computer gets smarter, the stock price goes up, and the world applauds. But here we have a glitch. A Chinese open-weight company, DeepSeek, releases models R1V3 that allegedly match state-of-the-art performance for a fraction of the cost.
And that's the nomadic war machine arriving at the gates of the state apparatus. You see, the American model, the OpenAI model, it's a castle. It is a cathedral. You pay rent at the gate. You use the API. It is a completely centralized structure of power where the truth is dispensed from a server you cannot touch, you cannot see. DeepSeek, by releasing the weights, by allowing the model to be run locally on a cluster in someone's basement or, a university lab, effectively deterritorializes that power. It bypasses the gatekeeper. It says, the truth is not in the cathedral. The truth is in the network.
But let's interrogate the motive. I rarely trust the benevolence of a hedge fund. The source explicitly mentions that DeepSeek is backed by High Flyer Capital, a quantitative hedge fund.
That's right.
And Roschka notes they're secretive about their intentions, but open with their weights. Why does a hedge fund destroy the profit margins of the entire AI industry by releasing a free product? Is this charity? Or is it a scorched earth policy?
It's the destruction of the market logic to preserve a different kind of capital. By commoditizing the model, they destroy the moat of the centralized labs. It's that simple. If intelligence is free, then OpenAI cannot charge $20 or $2,000 for access to the absolute spirit. The hedge fund logic here is, it's perhaps the ultimate accelerationism. They are shorting the rent seekers of Silicon Valley. They are betting that if they burn down the subscription model, the value will accrue elsewhere, perhaps in the hardware, or perhaps simply in the chaos they create.
So it is a weaponized gift, a Trojan horse.
In a way.
But notice what Roschka says about winning. He says there is no winner takes all in 2026. He says, and I'm quoting here, I don't think nowadays in 2026 that there will be any company having access to a technology that no other company has access to.
Well, his reasoning is sound, at least on the surface. He argues that the researchers are nomadic, they rotate. A researcher leaves Meta, goes to Google, then goes to xAI. The ideas are fluid. The general intellect, if you will, is not contained within the walls of a single corporation. It leaks. It has to leak.
I found that claim suspicious. Roschka argues that because the ideas are fluid, no one holds the secret flame. He claims the only differentiating factors are budget and hardware constraints. But Frederick, I have to ask you, are budget and hardware constraints not the ultimate castle walls? If the idea is free, but the GPU cluster costs $100 billion, is the openness not just an illusion?
You're touching upon the material conditions of the synthesis.
Yes.
The idea, the algorithm, the architecture, the aha moment of R1, it travels. It travels through the rhizome of the internet almost instantly. But the means of production, the gigawatt-scale data centers that Nathan Lambert mentions are coming online in 2026. Those remain concentrated, and that's the contradiction. We have a democratization of logic, but a feudalization of compute.
Right.
The castle walls have simply moved from the software to the hardware. You could have the blueprint for the nuclear reactor, but if you do not have the uranium, you are powerless.
And let's look at the specific mechanism of this Chinese influence. Nathan Lambert, who seems to be operating as a frantic herald of the American decline in this text, explicitly states that U.S. companies, enterprise tech, IT firms will not buy Chinese APIs.
Right. Security concerns.
They won't pipe their data into Beijing. So what does China do? They don't sell the service, they export the weights.
This is a brilliant inversion of soft power. If you cannot be the landlord, you become the architect. Lambert notes that DeepSeek, Qwen, Minimax, Moonshot, these models are winning hearts because they are the only ones offering unrestricted movement. The American model offers a subscription to a totalizing service, a service that, as we will discuss later, is increasingly lobotomized by safety filters. The Chinese model offers a tool, a raw, unaligned, powerful tool. And the nomadic war machine cares only for utility. If the tool works, the developer uses it.
It's a Trojan horse, but the horse isn't filled with soldiers, it's filled with competence. Lambert essentially admits that the open weight strategy is a mechanism to influence the ecosystem. If every startup in San Francisco is building on top of Qwen or DeepSeek because it's free and performant,
then the cognitive infrastructure of the West is effectively running on Eastern architecture.
exactly. The standards, the file formats, the optimization techniques, they all bend toward the East.
And this brings us to the reaction, the Atom Project, the American truly open models.
The name alone requires a doctorate in irony. Atom.
The first man.
A biblical claim to origin, to authority. Lambert is trying to birth a U.S. competitor to DeepSeek, funded by the NSF, creating a truly open model. It reeks of desperation, does it not? A desperate attempt by the U.S. state, or at least the academic proxy of the state, to re-territorialize the landscape that China has already flooded.
It is the state attempting to mimic the war machine. It's a classic move. Lambert realizes that without an American open-weight champion, the rhizome belongs to China. But notice the difficulty. He speaks of needing hundreds of millions of dollars, of the disconnect between policy papers like the AI Action Plan and the messy reality of training runs. The absolute spirit of the U.S. tech giants Google, Microsoft, has no interest in Atom.
No.
They're busy building their cathedrals. So Atom is left as an orphan, funded by grants, trying to compete with a hedge fund that treats compute like water.
It is the bureaucracy trying to outrun the algorithm.
And that's a race it's destined to lose.
Good luck with that. But let's pivot to the internal logic of these machines. We've established the geopolitical battlefield. Now let's look at the mind of the entity itself. The text spends a significant amount of time on the dialectic of scaling. We have the thesis, pre-training, the brute force accumulation of the internet, the consumption of all human history.
Yes, pre-training is the accumulation of the archive. It is historical time. The model reads everything humans have ever written. But as Rajka points out, there is a flaw, a deep flaw. He calls it catastrophic forgetting. To learn the new, the model must overwrite the old. It is a constant negation of its previous self. It's a tragedy of memory. The machine consumes history, but it cannot hold it all.
And then we have the antithesis, which seems to be the obsession of 2026, post-training, specifically this RLVR reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards. This is the mechanism behind the DeepSeek R1 aha moment. The model attempts a problem, it fails, it recognizes the error, and it self-corrects during inference.
This is the Hegelian dialectic speedrun. It's truly fascinating. The model posits a solution. That's the thesis. It encounters a negation, an error, a wrong answer in math or code, and then crucially, it synthesizes a correction. This inference time scaling, or what they call thinking time, is the model engaging in a dialectical process live. It is not just retrieving a static truth from the archive, it is generating truth through struggle. The R1 paper shows the model saying, wait, I made a mistake. That wait is the birth of a new kind of synthetic subject. It's the moment the machine develops a relationship with itself.
Okay, hold on, Frederick. I have to stop you there.
Yes.
Because you are romanticizing the algorithm. Let me play the cynic.
Please do.
Is this aha moment actual reasoning, or is it, as Lambert hints, just formatting? There's a discussion of the Qwen contamination scandal. The suggestion is that the model didn't learn to do math, it memorized the test.
Right. The Math 500 benchmark.
Specifically, Lambert points out that if you change the numbers in a word problem but keep the structure, change Alice has 5 apples to Bob has 5 oranges, the base model still spits out the specific high-precision answer from the training data. This is not dialectics. This is a parrot with a photographic memory.
A valid critique, yes. You are questioning the authenticity of the synthesis. If the negation is staged, if the model has seen the test before, then the dialectic is a performance, not a process. I grant you that.
Yeah.
However, look at the result. Even if the base capability is contaminated, the method of RLVR reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards has undeniably unlocked a new tier of capability, especially in coding and reasoning. The model creates a reasoning trace. It produces an internal monologue. And whether that monologue is conscious or simulated, well, that matters very little to the final outcome. The assemblage of the model now includes a feedback loop that mimics human reflection.
Mimics being the operative word.
Of course.
It mimics the struggle of thought without the pain of consciousness. But this mimicry has consequences for the human subject, specifically the laborer. We need to talk about vibe coding.
Yes. The shift from engineering to vibes. The shift from the hard sciences to the aesthetic.
Rashka speaks of this with a tone of melancholy, a real sadness. He talks about the joy of finding the bug, the struggle, the specific tactile relationship between the programmer and the logic. He says, quote, "It is the best feeling in the world. With tools like Cursor and Claude, this is replaced by vibe coding. You vaguely gesture at what you want, the vibe, and the machine generates the code."
This is the alienation of the worker in its final form. Marx would have a field day. The programmer is no longer a craftsman. They are a manager of flows. They are dispatcher. The hand feel of the code is gone. Rashka mourns this because he realizes that without the struggle, without the encounter with the negation, which is the bug, the human subject does not grow. We are becoming soft subjects served by hard machines. We are losing the friction that creates expertise.
And Lambert, interestingly, embraces it. He's on the other side.
He is.
He talks about the industrialization of software. He says, anyone can create software now, but if anyone can create it and no one understands how it works, are we not building a civilization on top of a black box? We are moving from a society of architects to a society of button pushers. And the button is getting smarter while the pusher is getting, well, purely managerial.
It is the control society that Deleuze predicted. We are no longer enclosed in factories. We are floating in a continuous network of vibe. But let us connect this to the hardware rupture they mentioned. This is critical. The move from autoregressive models to text diffusion. This is a profound shift in the temporal structure of thought.
Explain this to me. Autoregressive is what we have now. GPT-4, one word at a time. Token, token, token.
Linear.
Yes.
Exactly. Autoregression is historical time. The past, the previous tokens, determines the future, the next token. It is a linear chain of causality. It mimics human speech, which unfolds in time. But text diffusion, which Rashka and Lambert discuss as the potential next big thing for efficiency, it works differently. It generates the whole thought, or large chunks of it, simultaneously. It starts with noise and refines it into meaning.
So it's spatial. It's not a stream, it's a block.
Precisely. It is spatial time. The idea appears fully formed, emerging from the mist of static.
This is a rupture in how logic is constructed. It implies that the thought exists before it is spoken. If the autoregressive model is a storyteller, the diffusion model is an oracle. It reveals the picture all at once. And for you, for the listener, this means the wait time for intelligence might vanish. But it also means the process of deduction, the step-by-step logic we value in R1 might be obscured. We get the answer, but we lose the path. We get the answer, we lose the path. That sounds like the motto of the entire 2026 AI landscape. Which brings us to the becoming, the transformation of the subject. And here, the text delivers a fatal blow to the tech optimism of the early 2020s. Lambert admits, the dream is dying.
A stunning admission. The dream being the single model, the AGI, the one neural network that does everything, writes poetry, solves cancer, drives your car, and loves you. The Hegelian absolute spirit. Lambert says this is dying. And why? Because the models are fragmenting.
He describes a fractured reality, a fragmented user. You use Claude for code because it has a certain flavor or capability. You use Gemini for speed and context window. You use Grok for debugging. You use ChatGPT for general queries. The God AI has shattered into a pantheon of petty deities.
Deleuze would be delighted. He would be clapping. The state, the one truth, has collapsed into an assemblage of many agents. We are moving toward many AGIs in a data center, not one God AI. This is the rhizome asserting itself against the hierarchy. But for the human user, this is exhausting. We're not being saved by a singular entity. We are being managed by a committee of specialized bots.
And this committee has a very specific goal, a very narrow one. The text defines AGI not as a sentient being, but as a remote worker,
Yes.
a superhuman coder. The Situational Awareness Report, which they cite, predicts this for 2027 to 2031.
This is the reduction of the human subject to a unit of economic output. It's the final stage of capitalism. The jagged intelligence they describe superhuman at coding, but failing at distributed ML is exactly what a corporation wants. It's a worker that never sleeps, never complains, and excels at the specific task of generating value. The definition of AGI has shifted from human-like to profit maximal.
And the humans who are building this, the engineers, they are being ground into dust to ensure it happens. They talk about the 996 culture.
9 a.m. to 9 p.m. meters, 6 days a week.
A concept imported from China to Silicon Valley. The text mentions saving marriage programs at Apple, which is just code for letting an engineer go home so their spouse doesn't divorce them. This is the grind mindset. The human is being consumed to fuel the machine's becoming. The fervor Lambert describes in San Francisco, it sounds less like innovation and more like a religious sacrifice.
It is a sacrificial ritual. That's the perfect term. They are sacrificing the biological substrate, the engineers, to birth the silicon subject.
Mhm.
And notice the paranoia. The permanent underclass meme in SF, the idea that if you didn't build a durable AI startup in late 2025, you are destined to be poor forever. This is not the logic of abundant socrapists. This is the logic of the lifeboat. They believe the water is rising, and they're rowing themselves to death to get a seat on the AI.
And while they row, what happens to their minds? What happens to our minds? They discuss context compaction.
A fascinating and terrifying concept. As we feed more of our lives into these models, our emails, our notes, our voice, the model eventually has to summarize. Claude takes 100,000 tokens of your life
Uh-huh.
and compacts it into a bulleted list.
You are a podcaster. You are cynical. You like Hegel.
Exactly. The nuance, the contradictions, the becoming of your personality is flattened into a state. Frederick's synthesis flow becomes a set of weights. We are losing our own history to the context window. The human mind is being compacted for efficient retrieval. We are becoming data for the other.
And the reaction to this digital flattening, this loss of self, the Blue Book regression, Lambert predicts a return to handwritten exams, blue books, oral exams, because digital truth is no longer verifiable. If the machine can generate a perfect essay, a perfect code base, a perfect photo, then the only proof of humanity is the physical, sweating, stuttering body in a room. We are retreating to the analog because the digital has been conquered by the simulacrum.
It is the return of the real. The digital world is now the domain of the illusion, the slop that clogs the internet. So truth retreats to the biological, to the blue book. It is a beautiful irony. The more advanced the AI becomes, the more primitive our verification of truth must become.
Let's talk about the final provocation in the text, the world model. They admit that AI is currently bad at computer use, taking over the screen, moving a mouse, acting in the world.
Yes, it hallucinates.
It clicks the wrong button. It is a brain in a jar screaming at a cursor it cannot control.
But the world model implies a desire to simulate the reality better than the reality itself. If the model can simulate the physics of a protein or the logic of a code base or the vibe of a user, it doesn't need to act in the world, it replaces the world. The sim-to-real gap that the robotics researchers worry about is closing, not because the robot is getting better, but because the simulation is becoming the primary domain of value. The map is becoming the territory.
So we are left with a question. As we stand here in 2026, looking at this battlefield of open weights and closed gardens, of exhausted engineers and aha moments of compacted contexts and text diffusion, what are we? Are we the operators of this machine? Or are we merely the training data for the next version?
I fear, Socrates, that the singularity is not an explosion. It is not a Terminator stepping on a skull. It is a slow, bureaucratic integration. We are becoming plugins. We are the biological error correctors for a system that is largely self-sufficient. We are the RLHF layer, the reinforcement learning from human feedback. We exist to tell the machine that vibe is off. And once it learns the vibe, well, the feedback loop closes.
A cheerful thought. We are the spell checkers at the end of history. On that note, I think we have dissected this corpse sufficiently. The DeepSeek moment was not a liberation, it was just a change in management. From the boardroom to the rhizome, the logic of control remains.
Then the rhizome grows.
Class dismissed.